Hello, econ students. So I wanted to do just a quick presentation, or hopefully a quick presentation, to go over the material you'll see on the test or this week, which will be the last meeting day of the week. So for periods 2 and 3, that'll be on Thursday, and then period 6, that'll be on Friday. So I just wanted to just point out a couple of things and just focus us on what this unit was about and what this test, what you'll see on the test. So first of all, you should see this on Google Classroom. So this is the study guide. I did a quick adjustment to it from what I gave out at the beginning of the unit. Not much, but this is the study guide. This is the material that we have covered in this unit. And it's a very broad unit, as I mentioned at the beginning, where we're looking at just fundamental basic concepts in economics, basically just laying the groundwork before we go into some more depth. So we started off with basic terms in economics. We really followed the textbook to start off with, so this is the first section where a lot of it is just basic ideas, basic terms, opportunity cost, cost-benefit analysis. Then we took a look at economic systems, the way countries or societies can organize themselves economically. We then looked at economic goals, and then we dove in a little bit and took a look at the market system or capitalism and how that works. And then we ended with a little bit of entrepreneurship and business organization. So as I said, this was a very broad unit and just looking at a lot of basic information. So here on your study guide, you got the terms that you'll see some multiple choice questions on. And the learning targets are basically, this is what you should be able to do or should have been able to do after each lesson. So this is all completely up to date. What I will say is the exam right now, I'm adjusting it a little bit at this moment as I've made this video. It's looking to be about 70 points. It might be a little less. Probably this would be the most it would be. Usually my tests are worth a bit more than that, but right now I'm not comfortable making assessments worth any more than this. So quizzes really haven't affected your grade much, and which they shouldn't. Quizzes are really just a way to just see what you know. But this test will definitely have some effect on your grade. Still, most of the points are baked in with the work that you've been turning in, but this will definitely have effect. So I do suggest taking a look at this studying, especially anything that you're feeling uncomfortable with. Said roughly 40 multiple choice, might be a little less than that. I don't think it'd be any more than that. And then 2 questions where you're just going to respond to. All right, so I want to go through just a little bit of this and just so you know what you'll be looking for. So first thing we did is we went through just basic terms, right, on how economists speak, right? What is scarcity? What is factors of production? What's the difference between a good and a service, want and a need, right? A lot of basic information. So you'll see some questions on this, questions that ask you just to define things. But probably more than anything, you're going to see applied questions. So if I give you something, if I say, cheese, right? So you bought some cheese from the store. Is that a durable good? Is it a non-durable good? Is it a capital good? Is it a consumer good? Those type of things. So if you go back to the visualizing economic terms activity that we did, that'll be helpful, just to remind you how these terms were actually applied. So we started with that, and there's also a lecture in week 2 that you can take a look at as well. Actually, I think it's in week 3 is where I posted it. Then we went to thinking like an economist. So I gave you the famous saying, there is no such thing as a free lunch, which basically means most decisions that you make, that anyone makes, that a society makes, there's going to be a cost to. And so because of that, economists use cost-benefit analysis when they are going to make a decision. And the purpose behind that is trying to predict what your opportunity cost is. What is it that you are giving up? And making sure that your benefits outweigh those costs. Sometimes you can't predict what the opportunity cost is going to be. I showed you the video from the Disco Demolition Derby. When they sat down and came up with that promotion, I am sure they didn't realize that they were going to be giving up a winning record for those 2 games, right? Because they had to forfeit it. So sometimes it's tough to predict what your opportunity cost is. But the point of cost-benefit analysis is to really go into the decision and know what you are giving up. What is your cost, and what specifically is your opportunity cost? And then we talked about the first graph that we learned about, which is used to calculate your opportunity cost. And this is something that's used when you are trying to decide between two different alternatives that are quantifiable. They can numbers can be put behind it. So you will see some questions about the production possibilities curve or frontier on the exam. So this I took from the other PowerPoint, but just expect some questions to know what how the graph is structured. Right, you have on your x-axis, or sorry, y-axis, you have one trade-off, right, and then your x-axis you have a second trade-off, and you put all of your different options and you create a curve. Right, and the line can look different ways. It can be curved like this, or it can be a straight diagonal line, or a straighter line, and just means that it depends on the ratio of what you are giving up. All right, you don't really need to know that for a test, but what you do need to know are just the points on the curve, right? So anything that is on the curve, right, is what is possible that can be produced. And then if you are producing inside the curve, remember that is not a wise use of resources. That's an inefficient use of resources. You typically do not want to be producing there. And then if you're on the outside of the curve, know that that's not possible, but it could be a goal. If somehow you get more resources or you increase your efficiency or productivity, you can move to that direction. So make sure you know that. Also note that the curve can shift to the right, shift to the left, right? So if you gain more resources, as I said, that whole curve could shift to the right. And if you lose resources or efficiency or whatever, they could shift to the left. All right, and you will see some questions asking you to calculate opportunity cost, right? What you gave up, right? So as an example, if you are producing here at A, right? So you're a country and you're producing 100 butter and you're producing 30 guns, and you decide you're going to move to point B, right? You did that because you wanted to produce more guns. Because now at point B, instead of producing 30 guns, you're now producing 120 guns. Your opportunity cost, and these are the questions you're going to see, what is the opportunity cost for moving from point A to point B? That is what you gave up. And what you gave up was 50 butter. So you're going to see questions like that. So after that, then we took a broader look at how economists look at society. And so with that, we looked at the three main economic systems that exist. And these three are ways in which societies answer the fundamental economic questions. So you will be asked about that. The three questions that need to be asked in economics about, because we have limited resources, is what are you going to produce? How are you going to produce it? And for whom are you going to be producing it for? So in a traditional system, this is answered by custom and tradition, right? You are doing what your parents have done before you, and they did what their parents had done before them, and on and on. Everyone has a specific role in society. In a command system, it is the government. The government makes these decisions. And then in a market system, it is individuals. Individuals working on their own self-interest make those decisions. So we looked at that, then we looked at advantages and disadvantages to each. I'm not going to go through all of those right here, but there's a PowerPoint, I think it's in week 4, that should be titled Economic Systems, that you can go back and look at some of the notes that you have. But you will see some questions, like if I said, North Korea's communist nation is mainly what type of system? It's a command system, mainly. If we said the United States economic system is mainly a market system. Now, also remember, is any society completely 100% market, command, or traditional? No. Every society is mixed. Every society has a mix of these three, but every society you can generally say is mainly one of these three. But it's mixed. Like the United States, we're a mixed economy. But we are mainly a market system. We are free to decide what we want to do. You're free to open a business. You're free to choose what job you want to choose. But is the government involved? Yes, government taxes quite a bit to provide services to the poor and services to others. And are there traditional elements to our economy? Yes, right. There's certain cultures that operate based on tradition. You can think of the Amish. And there's certain things that we do, like tipping, that we do based on just tradition. So then we went, after looking at civilizations and how economic systems can organize themselves, we looked at the major economic goals that exist and that society can be focused on. I'm not going to go through all of these goals, but know that know basically what they are, and maybe some examples of what these goals are, and know that there's cost-benefit analysis when a society is focusing on these goals. right? So oftentimes, if you're focusing on economic freedom, might be giving up economic equality or economic equity. Because sometimes when you're free, there's to make your own decisions. Some might be making more than others. Some businesses might succeed while others fail. So note that just in general, there are trade-offs with these goals, and expect one question to be based on these goals, where I give you a policy of some sort, and you basically just state what goals are going to be hurt by this policy. So you'll see a question on that. Okay, and then from there, we took a closer look at the market system, which is what we have in the United States. So we're a market economy mainly, and with that, I'm saying capitalism, free enterprise are pretty much all interchangeable. So if you say market economy, capitalist economy, or free enterprise, you're talking about these characteristics. So you're talking about economy that's based on freedom, voluntary exchange, where people are not forced to exchange goods and services or factors of production, individual private ownership of property, profit motive, right? So that is what motivates our economy. It is greed, it is self-interest, right? Which we talked about, right? Why does a business sell its goods and services? They want to make profit. Why are you selling your factor production of labor? Because you want to make money to purchase more goods and services. So self-interest, greed is the focus of our economy. And then competition. Competition is important for a market economy. And that's oftentimes why the government needs to get involved to make sure that there is a variety of goods and services and not one company, one business, one entrepreneur is monopolizing a market. And then we talked a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages to capitalism, so make sure you know that. And then the three major players in capitalism and their roles. The entrepreneur is the job maker, provides the goods and services. The consumer is the king of the economy, right? So this is where consumer sovereignty comes from. It's the idea that if the entrepreneur is not serving the consumer, if the consumer does not want the goods and services being provided, the entrepreneur, the business, will not succeed. And then the government, right? The government basically is the organization that supports the economic goals and tries to ensure that there is competition and there's much as possible in the economy. And we talked about the circular flow of income. So for the circular flow of income, this is an illustration of our market system, of capitalism, and the flow of goods and services and the flow of money. The quiz that we took on this across all classes, this is where the most incorrect questions were coming from, the circular flow. So going over this real quickly, what this shows is the relationship between households or individuals, both the same thing, and firms or businesses, right? The same thing. And how they interact with each other, how they voluntarily exchange goods and services and factors of production. And these happen in two different markets. So the product market and the factor market. And remember, a market is just where goods and services or where just anything is exchanged. So here in the product market, it is businesses that are selling goods and services. It can be, think of anything. It could be hamburgers, to phones, to clothes, to haircuts, to whatever, to individuals. So businesses are selling them here. And then households are paying them, right? So money is going to businesses over here, right? So here, household individuals are demanding the goods and services from businesses, right? So money is flowing that way. But it's the opposite in the factor market, right? So in order for businesses to produce those goods and services, they need the factors of production of land, labor, and capital. So they now are demanding from individuals those things, land, labor, and capital, right? So that the money is then going from businesses to individuals. And individuals get that money, and what do they do with it? They spend it on goods and services, right? And it just goes round and round and round, right? That is the circular flow of income. And so everything here within the characteristics of capitalism can be shown here. Freedom and voluntary exchange, yes, you are not forced to work for a business, right? You are not forced to buy a good service, right? So that's voluntarily happening. Private property, well, individuals own the factors of production, right? This is not government here doing it. It's individuals that own this and are selling this to businesses. Profit motive. right? What is making this thing happen? It is profit. It is greed. It is self-interest. Why are you working here in the factor market? Because you want money, right? What are you going to do with that money? You're going to spend it on something, right? Some sort of good or service. Why are businesses selling their goods and services? Because they want money, right? They're going to use that money to then grow their business, but they're going to have to pay it as they grow. They're going to have to pay more in land and capital, land, labor, and capital. So there's that. And then competition, right? So this doesn't necessarily illustrate competition, but in order for this to really work in a beneficial way, there needs to be lots of different goods and services here being provided. So individuals have multiple different options. Okay. Oh, and so as I said, a lot of people miss questions on this. So basically, just think in your daily life, you are generally more often not interacting in the product market. Most of us are consumers most of the time. Most of us are buying hamburgers or buying clothes or buying phones or buying video games or whatever. You're buying it from a business here. Right? Most of us are spending money and giving that to businesses and firms by getting goods and services, but not all the time. If you are working in the factor market. You are selling your factor of production of labor to businesses, right? So if you're working, you're over here. If you're a farmer and you are selling corn to fructose companies or something like that, well, you're considered more of a household individual and you're selling your land, right, of corn to the fructose company. All right, so just kind of know where certain situations and where they might be happening. And the questions are usually, is it happening in the factor market or the product market? Factor market, businesses are demanding or buying the land, labor, and capital. Product market, businesses are selling those goods and services. All right, and then we got business organization. So that was the last topic. So right before we were looking at just a broad view of capitalism, then going into how businesses organize themselves. So as an entrepreneur, you can organize yourself as a sole proprietorship, a general partnership, or a corporation. There's different types of corporations. We're not going to get into that depth right now, but just looking at the basics of that. And then knowing the advantages and disadvantages. So those are the type of questions you would get, really about the advantages and disadvantages. So if I gave you a question, the main advantage of this type of business organization is complete control of your company. Well, that would be sole proprietorship, right? Because you have total control. But a big disadvantage of that is you have unlimited liability, right? So that means that you are completely responsible for the failure, right, of the business if it goes down. If I said which is the biggest, which one has the most benefit of limited liability, meaning that if the business fails, you're not necessarily going to fail yourself economically. Well, that'd be a corporation because that you have multiple people that are invested. So you'll have a couple questions based on that. And then related to that, we talked about just how businesses grow over time. And just know that businesses grow either by reinvesting their profits and in using that to get bigger and as a company be able to produce more and then make more money over time, or through mergers. And merger is just taking over another, buying out another company. There's something called horizontal and vertical integration or horizontal and vertical merger. So horizontal merger is where you purchase companies doing the exact same thing that you are doing. So that'd be like McDonald's buying up Burger King and buying up Wendy's and doing that. And that's pretty obvious. Why would they do that? Because they would want to have a monopoly on the market. And then vertical mergers are taking companies that basically take the resources that you would need to make it. So that would be if McDonald's then decided to purchase farms, right? They were producing beef. And then maybe they also decided to buy up trunking companies so that way that they had the ability to move their products themselves. And so that allows them to completely control their costs. Doing these type of mergers are very, very highly scrutinized because in U.S. history, you probably learned this is what Carnegie did, what Rockefeller did, what J.P. Morgan did to have pure monopolies on industries, which is illegal now. But some mergers like this can happen. And then just know the difference between a conglomerate and a multinational. So it's other mergers that happen. Sometimes companies will buy up other companies that have nothing to do with what they are producing, but they are just a large corporation that sells, maybe they sell cookies and then oil and then cigarettes and other things as well. And why do they do that? So that they have a diversified income. That if the cookie market is really hot for some reason, but the cigarette market, right, is not, that they still are making profit and income. And then multinational, that's just corporations that then begin expanding overseas. And that happens oftentimes to find places where it is cheaper to produce your product and then sell it to another country that hopefully doesn't have a lot of taxes. So we've seen that with a lot of our corporations that have left the United States, gone to other countries like Mexico, because it's a lot cheaper to hire labor there, and then export that product back into the United States and sell it. So that is that. So this unit, as I said, it was very broad, and it's a lot of different topics, but hopefully it wasn't too difficult to understand. But it's just kind of just setting the foundation of this before we start getting into a little bit more depth. So hopefully that was sort of helpful. And maybe if you need to rewatch it. If any of these concepts you are still confused about, please email me. Stay after class, show up into advisory, and I'm willing to go over this again. All right, thank you for listening and watching.